This video is proudly sponsored by Gamersgate. Download games anytime, anywhere. Visit Gamersgate.com.
It's the foggy dream, every dog would like to be. Let you play the game you see.
Welcome to Elder Geeks Elder Speak. Today is Wednesday, July 25th, 2012. My name is Randy Asenchak, editor of ElderGeek.com. Today in the background, you're going to be seeing gameplay footage from the PC version of Awesomenauts, a game at which I am terrible. I'm still learning the characters, but it's still just really fun as hell. I'm generally bad at MOBA games, so if it looks like I'm doing terribly, it's because I actually am doing terribly. Today on the show with me, I have host of Radio Free Gamer, also writer for the site ElderGeek.com, Justin Johnson. Welcome back to the show, my good friend.
I write stuff.
You do. Occasionally you write stuff, and you occasionally also do some pretty awesome video reviews for us, too.
Yes, I do the talkings.
Yes, you are one of the few people that are brave enough to do your own talkings for your videos, which is awesome because you have a good voice for it.
Oh,
What
thank you.
are you playing anything right now in particular that people should know about? Are you working on anything particular for the site? And sub question, is there anything exciting going on with Radio Free Gamer this week?
I'm kind of bringing it close to Radio Free Gamer with the hopes of putting some effort into a new exciting project. So,
Ooh.
yeah.
But for everybody out there, tonight is going to be, because today, by the time they hear this, it's going to be Wednesday, so tonight they will be hearing a new Radio Free Gamer, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Cool. And then you can actually check that out on 8bitx.com, and you can actually listen to it live at 7 p.m. Eastern Time?
7 p.m. it is, yes, Eastern.
Nice. Damn, nailing it. All right. Well, tonight I actually wanted to bring you on the show because out of everybody that I was talking to recently, and this was kind of funny because this show, I actually had recorded a version of this show that we're doing right now. I recorded the version of this show last night by myself, and I thought to myself, man, everybody already kind of knows about this, and maybe it's a little bit of old news, but the news isn't really that old, and out of everybody that I talked to about it, nobody had known about this. And considering you're one of my closer friends who actually knows a fair amount about the Final Fantasy series as a whole, you've played probably as many as I have, maybe even a few more. I don't know, but I feel that you are the most comfortable co-host for this little adventure we're about to have here.
Oh, you make me feel special too, Randy.
You are special. But tonight, if you're curious, we're actually going to be piling all together all of the rumors that are flying around Final Fantasy 15, because there are a lot, and they are substantial, and considering the shaky ground that Square Enix is standing on right now, they could actually make or break the company.
I definitely agree, as we're going to get into, no doubt. They're really putting a lot of their effort behind this title, and it could, as you say, make or break them.
Yeah, because there was actually some mention a little while ago where they had said we're never going to be remaking Final Fantasy VII until we actually top our efforts with a new entry in the series, and then we'll go back and possibly remake Final Fantasy VII. So they with a new Final Fantasy, they want to be able to top the critical and the commercial success of Final Fantasy VII before they'll go back and remake it. And I kind of agree with that decision. Final Fantasy VII is still a fine game to play right now. And if you're really all bent out of shape about how it looks graphically, then play it on a portable and it'll look fine.
Yeah. You obviously when a company like Square Enix comes up and say, well, we want to top our previous game, we want to do better than our best game ever, arguably, then, obviously, you want each game to be a bigger success than the last. But I think you are right. Every time a new Final Fantasy game comes out, it undoubtedly gets compared to the previous ones, and Final Fantasy VII is the big one. So maybe they want to get that monkey off their shoulders before they go back and revisit that game.
I think it's also kind of a self-realization of that they know that they aren't doing as well as they should be, that they're not doing as well as they have been doing in the past. Because before, like when Final Fantasy VIII came out, they didn't have to say as much like, hey, we're the company that did Final Fantasy VII, by the way. And then when Final Fantasy 9 and 10 came out, they just kind of said, here's Final Fantasy 8, 9, and 10, here's some pictures, and all of the fans kind of salivated. But I think over the past, say 5 years, maybe even more, Square Enix has been losing a lot of its faithful followers.
Right, they've gone from the company that made Final Fantasy VII to the company that made, Kingdom Hearts port ridiculously named spin-off title number 7.
Right.
You know?
They went from the company that literally moved the entire Sony PlayStation.
Mm-hmm.
People bought that console just for that game. People who were, like myself, longtime Nintendo fans were just suddenly like, what the hell is this Sony thing? Why am I going to buy it? Oh, wait, they're going to have Final Fantasy VII. Yeah, I'm going to buy it. You know?
Right.
That was why people bought PlayStations. But so they went from that to this, I don't want to call them a third-rate developer, but people aren't expecting the same caliber of work from them as they have in the past. But that brings us to today.
Mm-hmm.
According to a lot of the rumors, and these all come from Games Master magazine, there's actually some rather big rumors floating around about the development of Final Fantasy 15. But there's also some confusion kind of going into Final Fantasy 15 as well. There was a trailer that was released called Agni's... Oh gosh, I'm blanking on that.
Agni's Philosophy?
Thank you. Yes, Agni's Philosophy, and it's this supposedly real-time rendered video of a Final Fantasy tech demo. I don't even want to call it a concept art or anything like that, but they specifically call it a tech demo. And actually, if you go to agnisphilosophy.com, you can actually check out the video, and then at the very end of it, if you want to, you can actually answer a questionnaire and send it directly to Square Enix, saying like where you're from, what you thought of the characters within it, what you thought of the world that was in it. And there's a lot of people that are confusing this with a trailer for Final Fantasy 15.
Right, exactly.
But it's not that at all.
Yeah, back when the PlayStation 3 came out, they did a tech demo for Final Fantasy 7, and everyone kind of ran with that, saying, oh, this is evidence of a Final Fantasy 7 remake. No,
Right.
it wasn't, and this is in the exact same vein. So, hold your horses.
Yes, hold your horses. I think what they're basically trying to do is, I think they're really using this to get direct feedback from viewers out there to find out exactly what they want from their next Final Fantasy game. You know, unfortunately, I don't hear a lot of people actually talking about this tech demo. I haven't heard a lot of people talking about this tech demo.
I did not even know about it until you told me about it today.
See? Exactly. And so that's my fear about this. If they're using this as a resource to, like, farm information about what people want from the next Final Fantasy game, I'm afraid that only hardcore Final Fantasy fans know about this thing. Or at least the more hardcore Final Fantasy fans. So go out there, check it out. If you're a fan of Final Fantasy VII, whether you're old or new or no longer a fan, I'd recommend checking it out and then actually filling out the survey at the very end of it. It actually might help guide Square back into greatness. Who knows? They might just take all that and throw it into market research and forget about it forever.
So having watched it, what did you think were the high points and low points of it?
High points, I thought, was having a realistic looking female protagonist.
Yes.
She wasn't in crazy manga anime hair or a crazy manga anime outfit kind of thing. She was a realistic looking woman, and she looked like she fit her role as a mage of like this I don't know, she was guarding this magical source crystal kind of thing. The low point were the AK-47s.
Yes.
AK-47s do not belong in Final Fantasy games. Sorry, never, ever, ever, ever.
You beat me to the punch, sir. It was... as soon as I saw it, I thought, oh Jesus, Final Fantasy 15 is going to be a Call of Duty RPG. I was
I really
afraid.
hope not.
And well, you had guys in they had vaguely, I don't want to be racist here, but they had vaguely Arab head wrappings. They had
and they were driving like a beat up pickup truck. They were kind of meant to look like the quote unquote stereotypical terrorist.
Exactly.
You know, look.
Yeah, they were speaking what I assume is I'm sorry if I'm wrong here, but what I assume is a made-up, vaguely Arabic-sounding language. They had AK-47s, which is the typical bad guy gun, or gun that looked...
Stereotypical bad guy gun, anyway.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And as soon as I saw it, I thought, these guys aren't Final Fantasy villains. They're, average genre shooter X villains.
Right. And I'm not saying I wanted them to be all like done in Dayglow armor like Final Fantasy 13 bad guys, but at least in Final Fantasy 6, 7, 8, 9, they all had very unique uniforms. You know, like they might have been. You could tell that they were a knight, or you could tell that they were a soldier or whatever. But they didn't use real life models to make these things.
Right. Exactly. And yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say those were that was my high points and my low points. What was your high point for it?
High point, honestly, was the facial syncing on the guy who you actually got to see talk. It looked very natural. I'm going to compare it to LA Noire, of course, because they prided themselves on their facial sync. It looked far more natural. It looked, I mean, the LA Noire is awesome, but it still, for me, resides in the uncanny valley. This looked totally natural. I thought it looked great. I thought it was a little bit closer to maybe what Killzone 3, the cinematics in Killzone 3. And if this is actually real time, I'm very, very impressed.
I am too, but I'm also. Do you remember the first time we saw the quote-unquote real-time tech demo for Final Fantasy 13?
Yeah.
It looked super impressive, and you were like, wow, I can't believe that a game is ever going to look that good. But by the time Final Fantasy 13 was released, it was kind of like, well, okay, it looks just like every other game on the market. It's not really impressing me anymore.
Right. I mean, it did look nice, but on the other hand, you know, it was stuck at 720p. It didn't have all the bells and whistles, and I kind of realize now that I've said that the highlight of a Final Fantasy tech demo was the face syncing. You know, I really think that this could be an interesting concept. You know, I don't like the fact that they took generic terrorists and put them as their villains, but I do like that they took a world and made it look fairly natural, but still foreign enough, still fantasy enough.
Yeah.
I like that very much. As you said, I like the protagonist. I like that she got wounded visibly and had to heal herself.
Using a potion bottle, which I thought was a nice touch.
It looked like a Nuka-Cola bottle.
It did.
The Nuka-Cola plasma, or whatever it was called, the quantum Nuka-Cola.
Right.
Low point, honestly, there were some really bad frame rate stutters in there. I guess that's to be expected, but still, that and the villains, I really, it took me out of it when I, saw people brandishing weapons that were obviously AK-47s, just tweaked a tiny little bit.
Yeah, I agree. And the other kind of low point for me, this is kind of an odd low point. The teeth on the monsters, they look like rubber. Even though this was a digital creation and not from like some kind of puppet world, they kind of looked like puppet heads to me. They didn't. Does that make sense at all?
They didn't look threatening, I suppose.
They looked like they were big teeth, but they didn't look like they were natural teeth, and therefore looking threatening, I suppose. It just looked like a big mouth of unwieldy teeth, and I don't know.
Right.
It's kind of a dumb complaint, I know, but that was just kind of what I thought. But let's talk about Final Fantasy 15 itself, because this tech demo has gotten people excited for Final Fantasy 15. There's still a whole lot of people that are confused, thinking that is Final Fantasy 15. But the rumors about Final Fantasy 15 are coming all from Games Master Magazine. I think I mentioned that earlier. But some of the big points are, and I'm actually going to go down them point by point. Apparently, Final Fantasy 15 is it's been in full production since January 2010. These are all rumors, by the way, so don't take this as Bible. These are all just rumors, but they are supposedly coming from a good source. So I just want to speak about them as though they are rumors. Full production as of January 2010, a month after Final Fantasy 13 was released in Japan. With apparently a development team of over 200 people. The director is the same person as Final Fantasy 6, 9, and 12, Hiroyuki Ito. The co-director led a small part of the development team led to make Tactics Ogre for the PSP in parallel with Final Fantasy 15. He's currently multitasking as the lead UI designer for Final Fantasy 14 2.0 and co-director of Final Fantasy 15, and that's Hiroshi Minagawa. The game design and battle system will be a major evolution of Final Fantasy XII's. The game will be set in an open world and have a sprawling, crowd-filled cities on par with Assassin's Creed. The battle system now allows you to target different parts of an enemy's body, kind of like Vagrant Story. And Yoichi Wada, president of Square Enix, wants the game to have a world scale, the volume and content that surpasses The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. And he also wants the game to surpass Final Fantasy VII in worldwide sales and critical reception. Out of those, do you believe all of these, or do you believe any of these, all of these, or none of these?
I don't believe all of them. First off, to give you a sense of a point to compare this against, the development team for Skyrim was roughly 100 people. I looked this up on the Wikipedias, so it's true.
Look at you, Mr. Researcher, man.
I'm prepared. Roughly 100 people. So they want to double that. And honestly, throwing more people at a problem or at a product doesn't necessarily make it better. You know, on one hand, yes, if they're going to be that ambitious, then they should put all of the best people they can muster onto this project. Mm-hmm. But, you know, sometimes there is such a thing as having too many cooks in the kitchen.
Oh, all the time. I totally believe in that.
Mm-hmm. So,
but you don't think, you think that that 200 people is an exaggeration? That you don't think that there's that many people?
I think it is going to be an exaggeration because 100 people working on a game, that's a pretty huge number, and I don't even know if that includes like testers and stuff. I'm sure it doesn't.
Yeah. Might be. I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate here. It might be true if this is being developed for a future platform. If it's being developed for the Wii U or for the PlayStation 4 or the Xbox 3 or whatever we're going to be calling the next Xbox.
Right.
I could believe that if this is going to be a next generation game. But if it was a current generation game, then I agree with you. I wouldn't believe that. Right.
Because you do have to overcome the obstacle of developing for a new platform when you don't have a lot of experience with it. So, you know, if this is going to be a next generation title, then you know you're going to need more manpower. As far as worlds,
what do you think about Hiroyuki Ito being the director of it, the guy who directed 6, 9, and 12?
Well,
if that's true, then for me, if that's true, consider me not just interested, but incredibly excited.
Yeah, I am. Obviously, you know, 6 is up there with 7 as the best. Those are the best two. I don't care what people say. Those are the best two. If you look at the style of the games, honestly, 6 and 9 were kind of a little bit more traditional. They had stricter class roles. And then there was 12, which they said themselves in this rumor that they are going to try and emulate 12 more than 6 and 9 in the combat system, and I assume in the character customization system as well.
Yeah, you would think in like the job system that it would follow that same thing, possibly.
Right. Yeah. I'm sure it's going to be a job-based system. I would honestly, you know, I liked 12. I loved the battle system. I loved customizing with gambits and all that. The thing that got me, and I know I can go online and, you know, solve this issue, but the fact that the license grid wasn't entirely revealed. You had to unlock squares.
Oh, to find out what the next one was and so on and so forth?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I could see that as being a kind of a pain in the ass. Because then you had to, like, explore it to find, like, where the dagger was. You know, like some epic dagger that you found, you might have wanted to use it, but you had no idea where it existed on the grid. I could see that as being an annoyance.
Exactly. So, you know, some character is going to be your license grid exploration bitch. And...
probably somebody you don't use often.
I'm looking at you as much as I like. What was his name? The Han Solo. Is it like Balthazar or
Balthier?
Balthier. Thank you, Balthier. As much as I like Balthier, I didn't use him. So he and Fran were kind of exploring the license grid for me.
I used Fran quite a bit. I liked her. She was my Chewbacca. So I always had her like on like heavy weapons, so to speak. But kind of getting back to the list.
Right.
What do you feel about the quote unquote open world and the the sprawling crowded cities and stuff like that? Do you think that Final Fantasy could pull off an open world again?
Well, I think they can, but the most important thing to realize here is that this is all but total acknowledgement of the major criticism of Final Fantasy 13. Mm-hmm.
That you know what's funny is this list almost seems like I want to say like somebody's dream list to fix everything that was wrong or that they found wrong with Final Fantasy 13. All the common criticisms of Final Fantasy 13 are almost directly resolved by this list of rumors.
Right, exactly, and the fact that it was a corridor, which for the most part it was, really is chiefly among them, and so I think they can do an open world, much like Skyrim. The thing that I think will be difficult will be making a meaningful narrative and blending that in naturally with this world where, open world games aren't... The Grand Theft Auto series does a great job of having a narrative in an open world game, but for an RPG, I think, Grand Theft Auto can get away with having, missions that are basically just action set pieces or, really dressed up, they're set pieces, basically.
Right.
But RPGs should really traditionally be more about exploring a dungeon, leveling up, customizing your characters, taking things at your own pace, most importantly. So I think they're going to have a little bit more trouble weaving a good narrative in. Not to say they can't make a good narrative, but having it flow naturally with gameplay. Because, in all honesty, I mean, if you have an open world game, you should be able to totally ignore the narrative, like I do in Skyrim.
Yeah, or like here's kind of another example, and this actually skates pretty close to RPG, as much as some people may disagree with me. But the Red Dead Redemption actually has a fair amount of RPG elements in it. You have a character who, like, as you level up, quote unquote, you actually find bigger and better guns. You improve your arsenal. It has a really great narrative kind of woven into it, and I don't know. I don't want to. I'm not saying that it's an RPG, but you can definitely tell that it takes a lot from the RPG genre, And I think that Final Fantasy could learn a lot from GTA's and Red Dead Redemption,
Yeah, I definitely think so. So you look at those games and you kind of say, how can I marry this with what traditionally defines a Final Fantasy? So it'd be interesting, since they have such a veteran director, I think they have a really good insight on what defines a classic Final Fantasy game, and if they can take that and marry that with the open world gameplay of stuff like Red Dead Redemption, Grand Theft Auto, Skyrim, they might make something really special.
They really could, and this will actually touch on a couple of things. One, if it goes with a system launch, if it goes with a PlayStation 4 launch or an Xbox 3 launch or whatever, like I said, Xbox 720 launch, and it is this really special game, it could once again be a game that moves systems. Square could regain a lot of lost fans from this. And two, based on this final last rumor, the one that Yoichi Wada says that he wants to top Final Fantasy VII in worldwide sales, that would actually kind of go directly in line with something that he said earlier, saying that they weren't going to remake Final Fantasy VII until they top Final Fantasy VII.
Right. And putting so many people on this project, if that's going to be true, they really are going for broke, like they did with the original Final Fantasy. So
right. They have a goal, and they are pushing the limit for it, if these rumors are to be true. And I don't want to say I believe all of them, but there are a few in this list that I could believe. I could definitely believe the statement from Yoichi Wada saying that he wants it to be of the scale and volume to surpass Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. Because let's be honest, the Elder Scrolls series, specifically Skyrim, is taking money and food right out of the mouths of Square employees, hands.
Um, especially since Square Enix has kind of absorbed some Western developers and might be having some more Western influences. At some point, they are going to start clashing with the ever-expanding audience of people who likes Elder Scrolls games. And
Right. Especially since Bethesda Softworks is, adopting Eastern developers. You know, so I think that statement I could believe as being true. The stuff about battle system and everything like that, I don't know about, and I really kind of don't care about the that you can target specific body parts like in Vagrant Story. I don't care. That's too far in the mud for me to really.
Well,
kinda
it
give a
says
crap.
to me that it could, if you're either going to have a system like VATS in Fallout, where it's pretty cool, but it does slow combat down and take you out of it a little bit, or you're going to have a very smooth, action-oriented system, kind of like the original trailers for Metal Gear Solid Rising, where you're picking a plane to swing on, swing your weapon down and coming down on somebody's arm or something. That part, attacking body parts isn't really huge for me. I don't really care about it too much. I just wanted the battle system to be interesting and engaging. So I'd gladly sacrifice the tactics of having to cripple someone's right arm, their sword arm, if it's going to be slow and take me out of combat.
Yeah, and honestly, the other thing is, it's like most of the time in VATS situations, you're gunning right for their head anyway. Unless you happen to see it's like a 100% chance to cripple their leg, then you're gonna do that. But most of the time, you're just going for the head anyway. But what do you think about Hiroyuki Ito? Like I said, if this one's true, you can consider me as being very, very excited about it. But do you think it's true? Apparently, when Ito's been cornered and asked about it, he's been pretty tight-lipped. So he hasn't been denying it, but he hasn't been confirming it either.
The shopping list I'm going to look for a customization system which is similar to Final Fantasy XII, but friendlier to use, with more, a little bit more restrictions, like having more defined classes, but still having customization within those classes, even if it's just a la Skyrim, magic abilities, combat abilities, and stealth abilities.
Yeah.
Some sort of division to make it a little bit more clear how to build your characters, but without still restricting you that much. So kind of a more developed job system from Final Fantasy XII. Good characters and a strong narrative. I would love if they took a female character like the one in that video, maybe recast her voice actress because they sounded a little annoying. But don't make her female Cloud Strife like they tried to do with Lightning from Final Fantasy 13.
Right.
And 3, I would say bring back Nobu.
Do you think it's possible?
I think you could get him to do it.
Honestly, you and I saw him perform at MagFest just last January, and I got to admit that was one of the most surreal moments of my life. That was just an awesome audible experience, or audio experience, I should say. I've been to tons of concerts, and having it in that small crowd of maybe 200 people in that room, and that was just incredible hearing him play live.
There were 2,000 people in that room.
In that room, there was
2,000. 2,000 people.
I don't want to get MagFest in trouble, but I doubt that room was allowed to have 2,000 people in it.
I really doubt it, but that room was jam-packed.
I didn't even see how jam-packed it was, because we were right up front. We were 3-4 rows back.
We were
maybe
probably
5.
about 30 feet from the stage, yeah.
Yeah, so it was, and I didn't even want to bother turning around to see how crowded it was. I was that close to hearing, a musical god. But anyway, for me to see Final Fantasy to really win me back, because I used to be a huge Final Fantasy fan, and the last the last bunch of them, I would say 10, 11, and 13 have just really turned me off of Final Fantasy. But to win me back, they got to drop the J-pop crap. Two, they need to... I really want them to work on their voiceover actors, you know? It's almost like even though they're getting American voiceover actors to deliver, you know, these lines that are in English, it still sounds like that they... I don't even know how to put it.
Well, they treat it like an anime. They treat it like a... If you are used to watching anime, you hear these stereotypical voices. Like Vanille is probably the worst offender.
Yeah, you know what? I think that's it. I think you hit the nail right on the head. They're treating it as though it's an anime cartoon and not an actual... like a live-action drama kind of thing, which is what Final Fantasies really kind of should be treated like. You know, honestly, because the voice actors really just kind of turn me off on these kind of things. I really wish I could just turn off all voice acting and then just read the subtitles. Three, I know that Final Fantasy games have kind of made a name for themselves with their full motion video cutscenes. 7 was the first one to have like these gigantic cutscenes that were cinematic in their scope. I don't need that anymore. Now that we've reached a graphical level where you can get a cinematic experience within a video game, I don't need to have a cutscene to pull me out of the game to watch a game.
Right, you know, I hate to keep comparing it to Skyrim, but Skyrim did a fantastic job of conveying the narrative without ever taking you out of the experience. You know, the only time you can really argue is when you're on rails in the very beginning of it.
Right.
But honestly, all games have to start somehow, and I'm sure that the beginning is probably the hardest part of a game to design. So.
Right. But fighting dragons in Skyrim, to kind of keep the Skyrim comparison going, fighting dragons in Skyrim is a very interactive and exciting experience. It's just like, oh my gosh, there's this monster in front of me. It's 4 times the size of me. It's literally biting people and throwing them, you know, and it's not a cutscene, you know.
Right. You just come across it. I mean, you look up and all of a sudden there's a silhouette of a dragon above you, and
right.
It's like, oh well. Combat music starts going. Here we go.
Yeah. And Final Fantasy needs to kind of mimic that. I don't need the cutscenes anymore. Now that we're in this generation of high quality graphics and everything like that, I don't need somebody to spoon feed me these exciting experiences. I want to play them. So, in Final Fantasy VI delivered some downright, not just heart wrenching, but heart pumping experiences without needing any of that stuff. You know, breaking out of, going back and breaking people out of gosh, I can't remember the name of the city right now. I'm drawing a blank. But there's a point in the game when you split up into 3 different parties and the rebellion breaks apart and they all kind of get back together again. That escape and that going back into the city to secure everybody's exit, that was really exciting for a role-playing game. And it didn't need any cutscenes to have it happen. So they need to get back into that chain of thought, make the experience exciting, and not the visual movie exciting. Right,
exactly. A game. I love me some Metal Gear Solid, and yeah, it is watching a movie, but there's that appeal of games that manage to weave in the experience. They don't take you out of the experience to give you. To impart the narrative upon you. So.
Yeah. But, and I guess one final thing. I personally would really like to see them, and I said this in a previous Elder Speak, I would really like to see them go back to a medieval time-inspired world, even if it's like steampunky medieval time or something like that. But I don't need future Final Fantasies anymore, and I don't need parallel universe Final Fantasies either.
Oh god, and we need to, if we can get through the development of Final Fantasy 15 without announcing 4 spin-off sequels to Final Fantasy 15,
yes.
I think we'll be better off for it.
Right. You know what, I wanted you to expand on that. You had said to me before the show started that Square Enix, one of their biggest mistakes is announcing like 1,000 games all at once instead of announcing one and releasing one. Right.
I mean, I said this in an article I wrote like 2 years ago, and then like a month later, what's his name from Destructoid? Jim what's his name? You know who I mean.
The editor.
Yes. Came out and said pretty much the same thing in one of his videos on Escapist Magazine, but they, in the year that I wrote this, the past, Jim Sterling? Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Jim Sterling.
In the year before I wrote the article, they had announced and, released something like a dozen games, which compare that to Rockstar, which announces like they release one game every like 3 years, or even IDOS, or the only people who really release that many games are really super publishers who have acquired a dozen development companies.
Yeah, the EAs and the Activisions of the world.
Right, exactly. And as awesome, and I'm sure as talented as the employees and developers of Square Enix are, and obviously they're very talented because they keep coming up with these interesting projects, in the real world, you can't give all these projects the attention they deserve.
Right.
This is the real world. Square Enix is a business, and as much as I would like to see all those projects come to fruition, as they're never going to be as good as they could be if they're all clashing with one another for resources. Just listen to what did you say the co-director was? I forgot his name already. I'm terrible. He's multitasking.
Closed my window.
He's the UI director on Final Fantasy XIV. He's the something or another director on Versus, Agito, unlikely sequel ever going to happen. 13.
Apparently, Final Fantasy 13 Versus has actually been uncanceled, so
yeah, we'll see about that.
Yeah.
This you have this really talented guy double and triple dipping, and as I'm sure his expertise is needed. There's a point where if all of your employees are like this, if they're divided on separate but equally important projects, they're going to suffer. The projects are going to suffer, your employees are going to suffer, and that's what's happened. Plain and simple. They've lost sight on the quality of their products, what they need to do, the direction they need to go, and I think with Final Fantasy 15, they're going to address that. So I'm very happy.
Yeah. I don't think Square is lost. I really don't. I think they can find their way. I do think that they need to have the Dickens scared out of them, so to speak, though, before that's going to fully happen. I am still hopeful for Final Fantasy 15, but again, all the things that we actually really spoke about on the show today were I So, but like I said, go and actually check out the Agni trailer and give Square your feedback, because I truthfully think it's pretty important to do. But everybody, thanks for tuning in and listening today. Justin, thanks for being on the show.
Mm-hmm.
Good luck on your show tonight, Radio Free Gamer. Again, that's on 8bitx.com at 7 p.m. Eastern Time if you actually wanted to listen to it live. You can actually follow Justin on Twitter at Radio Free Gamer. You can follow me on Twitter at Randy Yasenchuk. Follow ElderGeek.com here on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube, all with the same last extension at ElderGeek.com. Be sure to hit up our main site. And if you have any comments, questions, or topics that you'd like for us to talk about on the show, send them to info@elder-geek.com. And I'll talk to you all tomorrow.